ever get that feeling. Like you're always on this treadmill, always chasing the next thing. I got to beat everyone else, got to win, you know? But what if that whole idea of winning is kind of the wrong way to look at things, especially when it comes to like the really important stuff, you know, in life and your work? That's where this whole idea of finite and infinite games comes in.
And this idea really took off with Simon Sinek. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But he's actually building on the work of a professor named James P. Carse.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Professor Carse kind of laid the groundwork, and Sinek really brought it to the forefront.
Got it. So this whole thing, finite versus infinite, it's about figuring out what game you're actually playing. Are you trying to get to some finish line, or are you playing just to keep the game going?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, cool.
We're taking a deep dive into Sinek's book, The Infinite Game.
Great book. I mean, I really think this whole concept, it's incredibly powerful.
Totally agree.
So what's the plan for today?
Well, the mission here is to really wrap our heads around this finite versus infinite lens, how to see the world through it. You know, how does it play out in our daily lives?
Yeah.
Particularly in business, which Sinek really focuses on.
Right.
And then the big question, what does it actually mean to adopt one mindset over the other?
Yeah, the implications, yeah.
But because, you know, maybe this gives everyone listening a new way to look at what they're doing and why.
I think this could be a real eye-opener for people.
Yeah. It makes you think about your goals, right? How you go after them.
Absolutely.
Makes you question if you're chasing a quick win or something more fulfilling, something that lasts.
Like, are you on the right track? That kind of thing.
Exactly. So to kick things off, let's just define what we're talking about here.
Right. Back to basics.
What are these finite and infinite games?
Okay, so a finite game is pretty straightforward. You know who's playing, everyone's agreed on the rules, and the goal is crystal clear to win.
So like, I don't know, basketball, a game of chess, that sort of thing.
Exactly. You know, you score the most points, you checkmate the king, the game ends.
You cross the finish line, the buzzer goes off, it's over.
Right. But with an infinite game, things are different.
More complex.
Way more complex. So first off, you might not even know all the players.
Interesting.
Yeah, new people can always join the game. And the rules, they're not set in stone. They can change as you go along.
Fluid dynamic.
Exactly. And the biggest difference, there's no real end, no winning. The point is to keep playing.
To stay in the game, however that looks.
Exactly. Sinek uses this great analogy. It's like a fork in the road. One path is marked victory, and the other fulfillment. It's about figuring out what you're really after.
I love that analogy because it highlights the choice we have, right? Are we chasing a fleeting victory or something more meaningful, something more enduring?
Exactly. And Sinek points out, in an infinite game, the game itself actually outlasts the players.
So it's bigger than any one of us.
Right. Players don't really lose. They just drop out when they don't want to play anymore.
When they can't keep up, yeah.
Or they run out of resources. Exactly. And when you start looking around, you realize so much of life is like this.
It's not about a quick win.
Right. It's about staying in the game.
Your marriage, your friendships, those aren't things you can win, are they?
Nope. No trophy for those.
They're ongoing. They require constant effort, attention.
It's a journey. Same with, I don't know, learning, your career. You don't just win at those things.
Yeah, and what about even bigger things? Global politics or business? You can't just declare victory in those arenas.
No way. It's constant change, constant evolution. It's all infinite games. So we've talked about the difference, right?
Finite games and infinite games you keep playing.
Okay, so now let's talk about what happens when you bring that finite mindset, that need to win, into an infinite game like business.
Because that's where it gets interesting.
And potentially messy.
Yeah, totally. Sinek uses this great example, Microsoft with the Zune versus Apple in education.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
At these education conferences, Microsoft was all about beating Apple, taking market share.
That was their focus.
But Apple, they presented this whole different story. They were talking about empowering teachers and students, advancing education.
Two totally different mindsets.
And, I mean, we all know what happened with the Zune.
Yeah. Didn't exactly take over the world.
Not quite. And Sinek argues it wasn't just about the product itself.
It was about the underlying mindset, the why behind it.
Exactly. Microsoft, they were playing a finite game. They wanted to win the MP3 player battle.
Right. And this even came out later with Steve Ballmer's final press conference as CEO. You know, he kept talking about 13 years of profit, very finite, focused on the numbers, like they'd won something, but
But Apple, even with the iPod being hugely successful, they were playing a different game. It was bigger than just the product.
They had this vision, this idea they were pursuing, and that makes a huge difference.
So this whole thing about focusing on the bottom line, beating the competition, can it actually hurt a company in the long run?
Oh, absolutely. It can lead to decisions that are really bad for the company, the employees, even the customers. Sinek talks about this idea of finite exhaustion.
I've never heard of that.
It's like this constant chase for short-term wins. It burns you out.
Yeah.
Like a runner who sprints the whole marathon.
Oh, I see.
They start off strong, but they can't sustain it.
They crash and burn.
And in business, what does that look like?
Yeah, what are the signs?
Well, you see companies cutting investment in things like research and development just to boost profits in the short term.
Sacrificing the future for the present.
Exactly. Or, constant layoffs just to hit those quarterly earnings targets.
Or stock buybacks just to pump up the share price.
Yeah, all those things. And it might look good on paper for a while, but it hurts the company's culture, kills innovation.
Makes them less adaptable, less able to weather the storms.
Right. And we saw some of this with Microsoft, where this strong focus on competition on the short term maybe overshadowed Bill Gates' original vision.
They lost sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. And Sinek makes this really interesting point. This whole finite way of thinking, it's become the norm in business, especially over the last 30, 40 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's what Wall Street pushes for, even what some business schools teach. And there's this scary correlation. The average lifespan of S&P 500 companies has dropped dramatically.
Like how dramatically?
Well, back in the 50s, companies lasted, on average, over 60 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Now it's less than 20 years.
That's a huge drop.
Right. There are obviously other factors, but it makes you wonder if this finite mindset is making companies less resilient.
Yeah, if they're not built for the long haul.
Exactly. So if this finite mindset is so problematic in an infinite game-like business, what's the alternative?
Yeah, what's the better way to play?
The real power comes from having a just cause, Sinek calls it.
A just cause. Okay, what does that even mean?
It's this vision, this future state that doesn't exist yet. But it's so compelling, so inspiring. People are willing to sacrifice to make it happen.
Like a higher purpose.
Exactly. It gives you meaning, drives you forward beyond just immediate rewards.
And all the little wins along the way, they become part of this bigger story.
Right. The just cause is the reason you keep playing the infinite game. And Sinek gives this great example of the Founding Fathers and the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
They weren't just trying to create a new country. They were fighting for this ideal of liberty, equality, self-governance.
And they were willing to risk everything for it.
Right. That's the kind of power a truly inspiring just cause can have.
Wow. Okay. So what makes a just cause really strong, really effective?
Sinek lists a few things. First, it's positive. It's about building something good, not just tearing things down.
It's for something, not against something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Second, it has to be inclusive. Anyone who believes in it is welcome to join the game.
It unites people.
Exactly. Third, it's focused on serving others, not just benefiting the leaders or shareholders.
So it's outward focus, not just self-serving.
Right. Fourth, it needs to be resilient, able to adapt to change, overcome challenges.
Because there will always be challenges.
Always.
Yeah.
And finally, it has to be idealistic, this big, bold aspiration you're constantly striving for.
It's like a North Star, something you're always moving towards, even if you never quite reach it.
Exactly. Like that ideal in the Declaration. All men are created equal. We're still striving for that, even today. And Sinek really emphasizes that you need to write this just cause down.
Okay, why is that so important?
Because it becomes a compass for the whole organization, especially when things are changing or new leadership comes in.
It keeps everyone aligned, moving in the same direction.
Exactly. It ensures the vision lives on, even if individuals come and go. And it's not just about growth or profits, right?
So companies just cause can't just be make more money?
Right. Growth and profit are important. They're the fuel that keeps things running. But they're not the destination.
But not the why.
Yeah, like saying the goal of your vacation is to be on vacation. It doesn't tell you anything about why you're going or what you want to experience.
I get it. And this whole pressure from Wall Street focusing on shareholder primacy, it kind of pushes companies towards that short-sighted mindset, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They're always pushing for those short-term gains, even if it hurts the company in the long run.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if the traditional CEO role is so focused on those finite metrics, what kind of leadership do we need in the infinite game?
Sinek talks about the chief vision officer, the CVO. Their job is to protect the just cause, make sure everyone understands it, and ensure all the actions align with it.
Like the guardian of the vision.
Right. And you still need the CFOs and COOs to manage the day-to-day, the finances, the operations.
But the CVO is looking ahead, keeping the focus on the big picture.
Exactly. It's about the long game, the infinite horizon. Now, another crucial piece of the infinite game puzzle is trust, and this idea of psychological safety.
Yeah, creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to be themselves. Why is that so important?
Well, infinite-minded leaders, they get that their people aren't just cogs in a machine.
They're not just resources to be exploited.
Right. They're human beings, and they need to feel valued, respected, trusted. Think about a company like the Four Seasons.
Oh, yeah, they're known for their amazing service.
Well, exactly. And their employees, they stay there for years, decades even.
Why is that?
Because they feel valued. Like that famous doorman they have, Noah, he's been there forever.
People like that, they're the heart of the company.
And they bring their best because they feel safe, they feel trusted, they know they can be themselves. And it creates this incredible loyalty and commitment. So instead of asking, how much can we squeeze out of our employees, it becomes, how do we create an environment where they can thrive?
That's a huge shift in perspective.
Absolutely. And you see this difference in how companies treat their employees.
Like finite-minded companies, they see their workforce as a cost to be cut.
Right, a liability.
Yeah.
But infinite-minded companies, they see people as assets, investments.
And they invest in them not just with money, but with respect, with opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And Sinek shares this great story about the Shell URSA team, an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico.
What happened there?
The leader, Rick Fox, he focused on building trust and psychological safety within the team.
Okay, how did he do that?
Well, he worked with a consultant, Claire Neer, and they created this environment where people could openly admit mistakes, ask for help, without fear of getting in trouble.
So they felt safe being vulnerable.
Exactly. And the results were amazing.
Like what kind of results?
Well, their performance improved dramatically and their safety record went way up. Because when people feel safe, they can communicate openly, share ideas, and that leads to better decisions, better outcomes.
Makes sense. So it's not just about someone's skills or their past performance, it's about their character, how trustworthy they are.
Precisely. Sinek says there's a difference between performance, which is about getting things done, and trust, which is about who you are, your integrity.
So you can be a high performer, but still be untrustworthy.
Right. And building a culture that only rewards those high performers, it can be really damaging.
Because it undermines trust.
Exactly. And Sinek uses Jack Welch and GE as an example.
Welch was known for being tough, demanding.
Yeah, and while he achieved incredible financial results, there wasn't a lot of trust within the organization.
And that might have contributed to some of GE's later struggles.
Possibly, yeah. Great leaders, they focus on building both performance and trust. And Sinek talks about this police chief, Chief Cawley, in Castle Rock, Colorado.
Okay, what did he do?
Well, he completely transformed the police department. Instead of focusing on traditional metrics like arrests and citations, he shifted the focus to problem-solving and community engagement.
So building relationships.
Exactly. And he created this culture of trust where officers felt valued, supported.
And what was the impact of that?
The results were amazing. Crime went down, community relations improved, the officers were happier.
Wow, that's a great example.
And Chief Cawley even had this formula. Culture equals values plus behavior. He emphasized that you need to reward the behaviors that reflect your values. That's how you build a strong, positive culture. So thinking about this emphasis on trust, on a just cause, does that naturally lead to more ethical behavior in companies?
Yeah, because it seems like that would create a stronger sense of right and wrong.
You would think so, right? But Sinek talks about this thing called ethical fading.
Ethical fading, what's that?
It's like this sneaky little mental trick we play on ourselves.
Okay.
It's when we do something unethical, but we don't feel bad about it because we convince ourselves it's okay.
We rationalize it.
Exactly. And it often starts small, but those little things can escalate if we don't pay attention.
It becomes a slippery slope.
Right. And finite-minded cultures, with their focus on hitting those short-term targets, they're really vulnerable to ethical fading.
Because the pressure is so intense.
Exactly. People feel like they have to cut corners, break the rules to get the results they need.
And if those people get rewarded, it sends a really bad message.
It says, we don't actually care about ethics, we just care about the bottom line. And we've seen some big examples of this, haven't we?
Yeah, like Wells Fargo creating all those fake accounts.
Or Milan jacking up the price of the EpiPen.
And Sinek points out that sometimes we use language to hide the ethical implications of our actions.
Right, like calling environmental damage an externality.
It makes it sound less bad, less real.
Exactly. And remember, just because something's legal doesn't mean it's ethical.
So how does an infinite mindset help with this?
The best way to combat ethical fading is to have a strong, just cause, a clear sense of purpose, and a culture of trust.
So when people are connected to something bigger than themselves and they trust their colleagues, they're less likely to act unethically.
They feel accountable to something more than just their own self-interest. Like Patagonia, they're really driven by their commitment to the environment and social responsibility. They're constantly trying to do better, even if it costs them money.
Yeah, they're a good example of an infinite-minded company. So another thing Sinek talks about is worthy rivals. How should we view competitors in the context of the infinite game?
In a finite game, you want to crush your competitors.
Right.
But in an infinite game, it's different.
It's not about destroying the other players.
Right. A worthy rival is someone you can learn from, someone who pushes you to be better.
Like they make you up your game.
Exactly. And Sinek uses this great example, Chris Everett Lloyd and Martina Navratilova, those tennis legends.
They were fierce rivals, but they also respected each other.
And that rivalry pushed both of them to become even better players.
They elevated the game for everyone.
Exactly. And Sinek talks about his own experience initially seeing Adam Grant as a competitor in the book world.
Right, but then he realized they were both working towards the same goal.
Spreading good ideas, making a positive impact. So instead of competing, they started collaborating.
And that's a key part of the infinite mindset, this idea of abundance.
Right. There's enough success to go around. Multiple players can thrive at the same time.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Exactly. Like when Alan Mulally took over at Ford, they were in a crisis.
Yeah, the auto industry was really struggling.
And instead of just trying to beat GM and Chrysler, he focused on making better cars, fostering collaboration within Ford.
He knew that long-term success wasn't about just outmaneuvering the competition. It was about creating something great.
Right. Or think about when IBM entered the PC market. Apple ran that ad, "Welcome, IBM." Seriously.
They weren't threatened. They saw it as an opportunity to grow the market.
Exactly. Compare that to BlackBerry when the iPhone came out.
They dismissed it, tried to copy it, instead of leveraging their own strengths.
And it cost them. Worthy rivals, they can actually help you clarify your own just cause.
Because they provide a point of comparison, a different perspective.
Right. But you have to be careful of cause blindness.
Cause blindness.
It's when you become so focused on your own vision, you don't see the good ideas coming from others. You stop learning, stop innovating.
So you can't be so obsessed with your own cause that you become blind to other possibilities.
Exactly. And even if a worthy rival fails, it doesn't mean you've won the infinite game. The game keeps going. You have to keep adapting, keep evolving. And that brings us to another important concept, existential flexibility.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's that all about?
It's the willingness to make big changes, even to your core strategy, if it's what your just cause demands.
So being willing to pivot, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. You have to be willing to let go of things that are no longer serving the bigger vision.
No matter how much you've invested in them.
Exactly. Like Walt Disney when he left his animation studio to create Disneyland.
That was a huge risk.
Oh, absolutely. But he knew it was necessary to achieve his ultimate vision.
Or Steve Jobs investing in the GUI, even though it could have disrupted Apple's existing strategy.
He was willing to blow things up rather than let someone else do it.
So bold, so visionary. And then you have the opposite, like Kodak.
They invented digital photography, but they clung to their film business.
And it killed them.
They were too inflexible, too afraid to change.
Yeah, a classic example of what not to do.
And then you have CVS deciding to stop selling cigarettes.
Even though it cost them a ton of money.
Right. They were willing to take a hit to stay true to their health-focused mission.
And contrast that with Rite Aid, their response was all about legal compliance, not ethics.
Two very different approaches. So adopting an infinite mindset, it requires courage.
Courage to let go of the familiar, the comfortable, the short-term gains.
Exactly. Like American Airlines, deciding to pay their employees more, even though Wall Street freaked out.
They were thinking long-term, investing in their people.
They knew that a happy, motivated workforce is a valuable asset.
Makes a big difference. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the infinite game, what's the biggest takeaway?
I think the most fundamental choice we all face is whether to play with a finite mindset or an infinite one.
Okay, break that down for us.
A finite mindset is all about those quick wins, being the best right now.
But an infinite mindset is about something bigger, something that lasts.
Exactly. It's about finding your just cause, building trust, focusing on the long-term impact. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
It's about playing the game for the sake of the game, not just to win.
Right. The goal is to keep the game going, to make a positive contribution that outlasts us. Sinek says it perfectly. None of us want our tombstone to just list our bank balance.
We want to be remembered for the good we did, the impact we had.
Exactly. So here's a question for everyone listening. What game are you playing with a finite mindset? Could you be approaching it differently?
And what is your just cause? What truly drives you? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Think about the ripple effects of your actions, the long-term consequences.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep playing the infinite game.